Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a very different video. This is going to be vlog style, and I was scrolling through Facebook a couple of days ago and I started seeing all of these sponsored ads pop up for different indie romance authors that I had never heard of. So I thought, what a neat idea would it be if I just went through Facebook, got a whole bunch of these sponsored ads and downloaded them all on Kindle Unlimited. I want to see how well Facebook truly knows me and knows my taste. I have already read the first book. That was Depraved by Eva Charles. This was my very first sponsored ad book that I've read myself, and it was really good. I gave it 4 stars. This is kind of a political romance, suspense, thriller type of a romance, and I actually really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it so much that it does end on a cliffhanger, the first book. So I started the second book, and I've actually finished the second book already. And I really enjoyed both of them. I gave them both 4 stars each. So I decided to go ahead and let's just vlog this and see how many I can get through. But let's see how well my sponsored ads on Facebook actually know me. Whenever I was scrolling through, I found this book. It is by Janie Diamond. I had never heard of this author, and it is called Dirty Like Me. So based off of the blurb, this book sounded really intriguing. I was super excited to get into it. Once I got into the actual story, though, I quickly realized that this was not the best writing. Fortunately, there was a lot of things that I thought from the blurb that was going to happen that did not happen. It wasn't like a chance encounter where she was just happened to work at a coffee shop and he happened to see her and wanted her to be part of his music video. Like that wasn't really what happened in the actual book. So I felt like the blurb was a little untrustworthy to me. The 6 weeks of them being together just kind of seemed very cliche. There was a lot of different plot points where it could have gone in a different direction and been unique. Like there was just some really moments that I felt like the author could have really capitalized on and made it a really intriguing book, but she kind of went with the basic cliche writing, and overall it wasn't that great. I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars. Also, once they finally got to have sex, like because they were together for 6 weeks and he was paying her an astronomical amount of money to be his fake girlfriend for these 6 weeks, she did not want to just like hand over her body to him because she felt like because he was paying her that it would almost turn her into a prostitute, which is understandable. But once they did have sex, like that was all they did. I'm talking from like 60% of the book to 85% of the book, they were having sex throughout the entire thing. Like that was the entire plot point for that 25% of the book was just sex. Like 10 times a day, they had 2 or 3 words in between and then they were back at it again. Like there was literally no plot. It kind of got redundant and boring to me. So that is what I've got to say about that book. We will move on to the next one. Just want to give you a quick update to let you know that I started a book and I DNF'd it very shortly after I started it. So this was in the Facebook ads. It has a prologue that was kind of vague. I knew it was going to be a dark romance, but I was thinking maybe mafia, something like that, because I'd been getting a lot of mafia recommendations in my Facebook ads. So I thought maybe, something dealing with that. Well, it's called Cut So Deep, and it's by Stasia Black. I had never heard of this author, but I was really interested to try this book, and I got about 2 chapters in, and I decided this book just really was not for me. The writing wasn't bad at all, but I'm just not really a dark romance fan, I found out. Like, that's just really not my thing. I love forbidden and taboo books, but I'm just really not a fan of dark romances. From what I've learned about this book, it is about a girl who is, she has a toddler. She is incredibly smart. She's almost finished with her college degree, but she is desperate for money. She's living in a very poor apartment complex, and her landlord is has made it known that if she does not pay all of her rent by a certain date, that he is going to be expecting payment in some other form. And she does not want to sleep with this guy. So she is desperately looking for a job. She goes into this interview at this major tech company, and this is after Harvey Weinstein. This is after the Me Too movement. And she goes in and she's interviewing with the CEO, and he automatically asks her to get naked and or to show off her boobs or something. And she is like, why, what is going on, but she does it because she's desperate for money, and she oddly gets turned on. But then it ends up being about her and her boss. She ends up getting hired by this guy, and I think the relationship ends up being between her and her boss's rival. But she has this relationship going on with him, but she's still like screwing around with the boss whenever he wants her to, and that just really just wasn't my thing. So if that's something you're interested in, great. I suggest you look into it, but that's just something I'm not going to read. So I DNF'd that one, and I'm going to start Liar Liar by Donna Ulam. I'm doing this for the Kindle Clear Out Readathon, so if you have heard me talk about this, that's the reason why. I'm also doing like multiple things at one time. But I did get this recommendation from a Facebook ad for Liar Liar. We will see how it goes. I will update you soon. So I finally finished Liar Liar by Donna Ulam. I started this book back on September 30th, and I finished it today, finally. Today is October 12th. So yeah, basically 2 weeks spent on this book, and let me tell you, it was a hot mess. I gave it 2 stars. The plot of this book was so good. It is about this Frenchman who gets into a really bad accident. He winds up on this girl's doorstep. She is just getting off of work, and she works at a strip club. She's not an actual stripper. She just works like waitressing there, but she is getting off work. It's super late at night, and she sees this guy, and she thinks that he's like trying to rob her or something. So she hits him over the head with this dildo. So it's kind of like this hilarious meet cute that is just really adorable. She runs into her house. She's freaking out. She's talking to her friend on the phone, and her friend's like, okay, call the cops, and here he is outside groaning, asking for help. Well, she realizes that this guy was actually hurt and was needing her help, and she ended up like bashing him over the head, causing him a concussion. So she's like freaking out. She goes outside and she gets some help, and they end up going to the hospital. Well, this guy speaks French, and she doesn't think that he speaks English, because when she's at the hospital, the staff is basically asking her if she can help translate because he is only speaking French. Well, the problem is that she doesn't speak French. So she's like trying to go between the two, but she doesn't know what she's doing. There was parts of this book, the plot itself was super interesting. He ends up like not forgetting about her, and by this chance, she ends up going to Monaco, which is where he lives, and they end up having this relationship. He is like this super billionaire head of the honcho guy, and that whole trope I am typically like a sucker for. I love like super hot rich man meets poor girl next door who has a heart of gold. Like, I love that shit. I'll eat that shit up all day. This writing style just wasn't for me. This book needed some serious editing. It was 500 and some odd pages, and it should have been about half of that. There was a whole bunch of scenes that just weren't necessary to the actual point of this book. And also there was a ton of descriptions. The amount of descriptions that were just overdone was just killing me. I mean, there was just entire paragraphs that I was skipping, and it normally whenever a book sucks me in, like I'm reading it and I read it within just a few hours and I'm obsessed with reading it. This book, I kept finding excuses to go do other things. I picked up about 15 other books in between reading this book. No joke. Like, I just was not, it was just the writing style was just not for me. Okay, so the next book that I've decided to do for the Facebook ads is going to be a vampire book. We are right in the middle of October, so I'm kind of in this paranormal mood. And so the book that I have chosen is going to be Blood Hunt. This is by Jessica Wayne, and it says, Hunting vampires is her legacy. Detective Rainey Astor walks a dangerous line between the human and supernatural worlds. As a vampire hunter, she's a formidable opponent, having killed hundreds of their kind. Yet when her latest foray in the supernatural world goes terribly wrong, she finds herself rescued by the very creature she's vowed to kill. Elijah Hawthorne is unlike any vampire Rainey has ever met. His sexy as hell exterior hides a tortured soul seeking redemption. Rainey knows she should avoid him at all costs, but fate has other plans. Together, they're forced down a twisted path of ancient revenge and tainted love. With Elijah guarding her back, Rainey must protect her heart, because giving in could mean a death sentence for them both. But if they don't discover the hidden identity of their enemy before the clock runs out, she's as good as dead anyway. So I just finished Blood Hunt by Jessica Wayne. This was my first book by this author. Y'all, up until this point, I thought this video was just going to be a complete dud. I've given like every book, 2 and 3 stars. I was just really worried that I was going to have to scrap this entire video, but holy shit. I love this book. Blood Hunt is so freaking good. I am shook. Okay, let me tell you about Blood Hunt. It is about Elijah and Rainey. Elijah is a vampire. Rainey is a vampire hunter. If you have read Cat and Bone series, the Night Huntress series by Janine Frost, this book is very similar vibes to it, but it's a different world. It's different world building. It's not like a copycat of it by any means, but it has kind of a similar vibe to it. I really love this. It has such a strong heroine. Rainey she was a reluctant vampire hunter. Her family she was born into this family of vampire hunters. They go back all the way to the very first hunter. They were able to trace their ancestors back all the way to them. So she has these actual like magical powers. So it ends up being that her ancestor was like part witch, part vampire hunter. And so she has these unique abilities. And her entire family has now been killed off. So all of their power is now inside of her, which makes her like the strongest vampire hunter of all time. And Elijah is like a 400-year-old vampire. He's a daywalker. He is an incredibly strong vampire, but he's not just a vampire. He's also part witch. And so his powers are very unique to him. And he was friends with Rainey's sister, who was a hunter as well, and she was killed. And he promised her sister that he would look after her. And it has some very, very witty banter in it. She tries to kill him a couple of times. She is just such a really badass heroine. I freaking loved her. I loved it this entire book. It was super fast paced. It does end on a cliffhanger. Book 2 comes out October 22nd. I cannot wait to read it. The book literally just grabs you from page 1. Like from page 1, you just know that writing style just completely worked for me, and like I was hooked. I loved the world building. I love the descriptions that she gave. Like it was just like from paragraph 1, she was talking about how she could literally hear each drop of blood coming down onto the hardwood floor. Like just her descriptions were just so vivid and strong. And so anyway, hopefully the second book, I'm hyping this up, so hopefully the second book is just as good as the first. Cannot wait to read it. So as you saw from my last clip, I read Blood Hunt by Jessica Wayne, and I freaking loved that romance. And I was so intrigued and so obsessed with that book that I wanted to read another vampire romance, another paranormal romance. So I went on Facebook and was going through the ads, and I found another one. I saw this book called Dark Prince. This is by Michelle Hercules. Let me go ahead and read the description real quickly to you so you guys can know what I'm talking about. There are only 2 ways a vampire can cross the gates of Bloodstone Institute: as a familiar to one of the blue blood vampires who attend the elite school, or as a snack. I'm neither, but I have to get in at all costs. My brother made a big mistake, and now I have to fix it by stealing from the most powerful and cruel vampire to ever come to Bloodstone, Luca Del Morte. If that wasn't almost suicidal, I need to get it done before the spell concealing my human nature wears off. But I forget that I'm only pretending to be a vampire. I'm still human and susceptible to Luca's dangerous allure. His darkness calls to my soul. His savagery makes my blood sing. I'm falling for the Dark Prince, craving him in a visceral way that's frightening and exciting all at the same time. If he discovers my secret, he'll destroy me, and yet I can't help wanting to get closer. I never thought I had a death wish until I met him. Okay, so this sounds like a vampire romance I've never read before. First of all, it's around an institute, so these vampires are still going to school. And so it almost sounds like a new adult romance. And that kind of intrigued me on its own because it's not your typical vampire romance story. So I jumped in and I read like 10-15% and then I DNF'd it. But I DNF'd it super late at night. And I kept thinking about the story all like the following day. And so I'm like, oh, maybe I was just tired. Maybe I shouldn't have DNF'd it so early. So I downloaded it again and I read the rest of it. And I shouldn't have wasted my time. I have this issue with DNFing books. I really do. It really bothers me to do it. And so it bugs me because I'm halfway through the story or I'm a part of the way through the story and I have these characters in my head and I want to know what happens to them. And so it continues to bother me until I read it. So I picked it back up and I did read it. Here's the thing. Michelle, her writing style actually really drew me in almost immediately. I felt that the story was really quite interesting. Once again, like I said, I really enjoyed her writing style. It was easy to read. It was first point of view, so I really enjoyed that. It did have a couple of chapters, I believe, in between two different... Yes, it did go back and forth between Luca and Vivian's perspective, so you do get both of them. I enjoyed that part of it. Now, that I've said that, let's move on to the bad stuff. So, this is about a vampire who is 5+ centuries old. He has this curse put on him where every 100 years he's supposed to sleep for 25 years. He has to go into a hibernation. And then he's supposed to come out of it after 25 years and live his life. Well, he had this curse put on him by some other witch or vampire or something. Anyway, he had a curse put on him. And so he went into hibernation, and now it's 95 years later, and his sister was finally able to wake him. So he's been in hibernation, or he's been asleep for 95 years. But this is set in modern day Salem, Massachusetts. 21st century, modern day. He immediately starts talking like a modern day teenager. But he's a 5-century-old vampire. He's saying terms that a vampire who's been asleep for 95 years would never say. He immediately wakes up and he has blood bags, and he immediately just knows what blood bags are. So I looked up because I didn't think blood bags were even invented 95 years ago, and I was right. They were invented in 1950. So a vampire who is 95 years old would not know what blood bags are. There was just a whole bunch of juvenile stuff that just really needed to be fleshed out. The characters needed to be fleshed out. Their love story, I enjoyed both of the characters. I related to both of the characters. However, their love story was just kind of meh. He has bloodlust for her specific blood. And I got that part. I understood it. But what I didn't get is how did he get from the bloodlust and wanting her to being in love with her and couldn't live without her? And that part wasn't really well done, in my opinion. But I just couldn't get over the juvenile fact of the matter that he's a 5-century-old vampire and he's talking like a teenage boy from the 21st century. It felt like she just wrote the story and immediately put it out for publishing without ever like having beta readers to help her with this kind of stuff. I don't know if this was her first work or if she had other people to try to help her with that, but unfortunately it just didn't work for me. I gave it 2 stars. I feel bad for that, but it is what it is. So now I'm moving on to my next book, and I will update you soon. Hey y'all, so I decided my next book is going to be Royal Savage. This is by Victoria Ashley. I have never read anything by this author. However, I have heard of this author before. So I was scrolling through Facebook, obviously, and I saw this blurb, and it drew me in. It was a little vague, but it was super, super interesting and intriguing to me. I will say I'm 25% of the way through this book, and I am really liking it so far. It is a little bit forbidden. Gonna throw that out there. I mean, there's a little touch of, I don't know if I'm gonna say it's cheating yet, but there's a little touch of something. And I don't really want to give it away any spoilers for it, for in case you do want to read it, because it doesn't like right out say it in the blurb, but she's dating somebody else. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not going to say who she's dating, but she's dating somebody else. And yeah, it's interesting so far. I'm really, really enjoying it. I am 25% of the way through, so I will give you my update as I go along. Hey y'all, so it may not seem like it, but it's been like a month, and I totally forgot to wrap up this video. So I've got 3 books to talk about. I was talking about Royal Savage last video, and oh my gosh, freaking loved it. It was so good. It was a 5-star read for me. There is a twist at the end of this book that I never saw coming, and it blew my mind. This book, the writing was very, very good. There is a second book, and people say it's not as good, so I'm a little nervous to start that one. But holy crap, Royal Savage, so good. Touch forbidden, a little bit of a dark romance, and that twist, man, it was good. Okay, so after I read that one, okay, y'all, you're gonna laugh at me for this one. So I was scrolling on Facebook, as one does for a Facebook ads video, and I happened upon this Redict, is what it's called, app. But I started reading this story thinking that it was just going to be a blurb, and it ended up being like the first 3 chapters of the book. And this is completely like a Wattpad thing. In fact, it actually is a Wattpad story. That's how I found the rest of it. But it's called Not Rejected, Just Unwanted. The author's name is under Hayboo, Hayboo 2017. So if you want to look that up on Wattpad, you are free to do so. But I couldn't believe. I read the first 3 chapters, and the writing wasn't great. It was obviously a fan fiction or a Wattpad story and not an actual novel. So it was, you know, Wattpad type of writing. And although the writing itself was very immature, the plot of this book was so freaking addictive that I had to know what happened. Which is crazy and kind of stupid of me, because I spent like 2 hours then finding said book and reading the rest of it. So basically the plot of this Not Rejected, Just Unwanted story is about Rainey. She has just turned 17, and in this lore, she is a werewolf. And in the lore, like on your 17th birthday, you are able to start finding your mate. You don't always find them on your 17th birthday, but after your 17th birthday is when like it's supposed to be like an instant connection, instant love thing. And so she goes to school, and she sent somebody, and she ends up connecting with said person, and she finds her mate. And he rejects her because he has a girlfriend and he doesn't want her. So anyway, he rejects her, and she is being bullied, and then she has to, like, she's saved by the alpha who's like next in line. He's not the actual alpha, he's like next in line to become one though. And it is actually their love story, but it was quite interesting, very amateurish. So anyway, but I did read it off of Facebook, so I was going to include it in this video because I read it. The next and the last book that I have to talk about is Blood Captive by Jessica Wayne. This is the second book, and I know earlier you saw me freaking out because of how much I love the first book. Unfortunately, I gave this one 3 stars. So it's still about Rainey and Elijah. The last book ends on a cliffhanger, and this one is quick to pick up, is also very action-packed and interesting. But in the first book, Rainey is very badass, very strong. Also, she's a little touch quirky. She's got some certain things, like she is in love with Skittles, and like that's all she eats. And she's... One thing I didn't realize is that this gal's like almost 40 years old. I thought she was like in her 20s, but because she is a hunter, she has like a metabolism and she doesn't age like all that much. So she still is able to get up and do things like she's 20 and not 40. So that was interesting. But in Blood Captive, the second book, her quirks turned from being kind of cute and adorable to being utterly annoying and repetitive and over the top and just really, really, really fucking annoying. If I have to hear about her love for Skittles one more time, I'm gonna slam somebody's head up against a wall. Like, I swear they mentioned it probably 50 times in this book. Not even joking. And I just was like, okay, we all fucking get it. Enough with the Skittles. So, yeah, this quickly went from being a 5-star read down to a 3-star. Can't say that I recommend the series as much anymore because of how annoying that is. But the writing itself is still pretty decent, and it is interesting enough. The second book also ends on a very, very big cliffhanger. I am going to read the third book. This is the last book in the series. I want to know what happens to Rainey and Elijah. But yeah, I'm really getting tired of the Skittles. So anyway, that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do more of these Facebook ad videos. I will talk to you guys very soon.